We're live. All right, we are live. Okay. I'm just gonna shut that down so that I'm not I'm on not my regular internet, so I'm just gonna make sure everything works smoothly. So hi, we are live. This is Showcase Zero 2002. Um, I don't know if people are going to start watching yet, but like there's going to be a video, a VOD going up later on YouTube, and you'll be able to watch this on Twitch for live for a few days. I think 7 days. So yeah, I'll do the intro for your benefit, people in the future. So yeah, this is Showcase Zero 2002. What is this? This is a showcase show, which is a I guess we're gonna be running through a few games, but like it's more about like giving the designers who have been taking part in Playtest Zero, which is a regular playtest event that we have every 2 weeks on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if you'll see below me here, most of them are muted. We have a bunch of really cool designers who come out and playtest games every other week. And I thought it would be a really cool thing. We thought it would be a really cool thing to just like showcase some of our games and like talk about them, like give short presentations. I was really inspired by Free Play's Parallels showcase, which they do every year or so. I took part in Free Play Parallels 2021, and it was a really cool experience to like have the space to talk about your game, but not just about the game, but like talk about things that you like enjoyed about making the game or something like that. So I thought it'd be cool. We thought, like let's do a showcase the games that we play tested in 2022, and also talk a little bit, like give space for the designers to like talk a little bit about like whatever they wanted to talk about with their game, things that they're excited about, things that they managed to do during playtesting, or just like, hey, I made this game. Go have a look at it. Here's why it's so cool. Right. So all the games that we talk about today, plus one bonus one, because Carol isn't doing a presentation, but they have a game, Exquisite Biome, in the bundle. So if you go to itch.io, just put that link in there, into your browser, or if you go to search any one of the components of any one of the games in the bundle, you'll be able to like click through to the bundle page and like get all of them together. So we've got seven games. Yes, I can count. Experimental Masquerade by Zuhayri Mohamed, Mangayao by Benjamin Moses Dino the second. We Failed You for the Last Time Again by KTPie, For the Other City by Thomas Manuel, Stand Up Hero by Takuma Okada, Exquisite Biome by Karo Session, and Kora Core, an RPG about fencing by Arisia. And yeah, so please go check out this bundle on itch. It will run, I think, for another 4 or 5 days, depending on time zones. So yeah, go check that out. Like when you hear about how cool these games are, go get the games for yourself. It's a really cool bundle. And yeah, if you, I still haven't explained exactly what we do in Playtest Zero, so I'll just do a quick introduction, which is we playtest games, and we playtest parts of games. The cool thing that I think it's a cool thing that we try to do is be open and welcoming to games that are 100% not finished. We've done some sessions where like the games are like really early stages. It's like more like play storming than play testing. It's a like depends how you want to like define that kind of distinction. I think I think all playtesting is valid. just bring a thing and like try to play it. And we will try to play it. That's a challenge. Yeah. So we do this every Tuesdays at 8 p.m. On a GMT +8, which is like Southeast Asia time. I put GMT +8 because a lot of people don't know what Southeast Asia time is, and sometimes, yeah. Anyways, and then we do Thursdays at 8 p.m. In Pacific time, so West Coast in the US. That's right. Yes, West Coast in the US. And that's Thursdays at 8 p.m. And for people in Southeast Asia, that's actually at like variously at like 10 to 11 a.m. in the morning. So if you are, you don't work or study during those times, yeah, you can come join us as well. And we are starting again next week. So we do this every other week, fortnightly. So 17th and 19th of January, we are restarting Playtest Zero after a short break. We take a short break every end of the year. Our final Playtest Zero session of the year is a no playtesting allowed. We're just here to hang out and chat session, which is always very fun. And then we are going to restart next week. And also, I wanted to mention, like, if you want to come to Playtest Zero, but you don't have a game to playtest, you are extremely welcome. If you just want to play a game, or if, like, one of the most helpful sessions I've had of Playtest Zero, I didn't bring a game to playtest. I just had a question about, like, hey, here's how I'm thinking of doing prompts in my game. Can we talk a little bit about like different ways that like games have used prompts? And that ended up being super helpful, and in fact super fruitful, in the sense that I made a really big change. It's not big. I made a big change to the game that like worked super well. So yeah, sometimes you don't even have to bring a game. Just like bring a question, or help people out playtest their games, and like, we have people who join us and just listen in and like check out the vibe. If you want to do that, that's totally fine as well. So yeah, that is what we do when we do it. And big thing I forgot to mention, we generally do short playtests, which means that on the Playtest Zero nights we do 1 hour ish slots. So if you can fit a part of your game within an hour, that would make it work for Playtest Zero. Just because like we want to get through at least like 1 or 2 games a night and give everyone a chance to like playtest their game. But also it's just I kind of like the format of just like, hey, let's just break down part of your game to like focus in on playtest one part. We've done stuff where we just playtested character creation, or just like a couple of rounds of combat, or here's this one like mechanic that I want to explore. So that's all fine as well. So yeah, that's all the introduction stuff out of the way. And we'll get to the thing that we are here for. I'm gonna bring up Ari's slides. Cool. All right. So first, I forgot this slide. Yeah. So our first presentation will be from Arisia Santiago, who you can find them on Twitter or at Arisia Rolls, and on Itch at Arisia as well. I'm gonna banish everyone else and myself to the Shadow Realm, so that we give the floor to Arisia. Bye bye. We'll see you in a bit once Arisia's done with their presentation, and then I'll bring that up. All right, Shadow Realm in 3, 2, 1. You're yeah, yes.
All right.
Unmute yourself. Okay, cool.
Right. So I'm going to be talking a bit about ambivalent relationship in games, or like how I try to design like this kind of blurred space between cooperation and PvP, so to speak, in the games that I tested in Playtest Zero. So a lot of the time, opposition and allegiance are fundamental ways that we see both games and stories. Like games are often a case of like who's pursuing what objectives and who is either cooperating with them or opposing them. And in the same way, we often see stories based on a protagonist and their objectives and the antagonists who oppose them. But much of RPG related fiction, both the cornerstone texts and official stories, rely on kind of a blurred line between those two. So, like in Romance of Three Kingdoms, you've got rivals who are teaming up, enemy of enemy and all that. Lord of the Rings, you've got the companions like fracturing within themselves. And of course, like Forgotten Realms, official fiction has a lot of both. But not a lot of RPGs I've seen have addressed this deliberately, which leads to two things that I find especially frustrating, which are decision by committee, where no one can act unless everyone agrees on something, which I find slow and boring, to be honest. It also leads to quite a bit of like backseat gaming, where people tell you what you should be doing. And the other thing is that these systems tend to be unprepared for inter-PC conflict when it does arise. So since they don't have any guidelines or like guardrails, this tends to spill into player against player conflict, which isn't what you want in these cases. A few RPGs that I did see do it interestingly are, of course, powered by the Apocalypse games. They've got the help harm mechanic or the string systems. What these do is they limit the magnitude and frequency with which players can mechanically influence other people's roles, whether that's cooperative or oppositional. The Mountain Witch does something similar with this trust system. I won't get into it because it's kind of complex. But what I like about it is that it represents through mechanics that trust is easily lost but hard won. The Mountain Witch also introduces these hidden goals for each character. So while everyone has the same like surface level goal of defeating the witch on the mountain, they've all got their own hidden agenda, which makes it hard to trust anyone. There's something similar going on with Shinobigami. It's another kind of hidden information game, which is very much PvP by design, but it has multiple goals so that it's not a zero-sum game. People like you can have everyone achieving some goals, even if they've opposed each other throughout the game. So that it lends to interesting plays where people might cooperate, might give up a goal because they know they can achieve something else. So what I've learned from those and tried to apply in the games I designed is that ambivalence kind of arises from three things, among others, which are differing goals, unequal constraints, and imperfect information. So differing goals obviously generate conflict, but if you want to get ambivalence rather than just outright opposition, you should ensure instances where there are mutual benefit and coinciding interests, at least for a while. When it comes to unequal constraints, this can be in a matter of abilities, options, or obstacles. An uneven playing field encourages cooperation against greater threats. So I chose Battle Royale for the background here because I think it captures like all these three things I'm talking about, where you have a lot of students, they're given different equipment, different weapons, and they have to band together because some of them are in a worse position than others. And, sometimes they don't all want to play by the same rules, so to speak. Finally, imperfect information leads to imperfect trust. So as long as suspicion abounds, no one can be purely allied, but at the same time, you can't generally risk going all out against anyone because what if your allies turn on you and you need their assistance later on? So this, creates kind of network where everyone is hedging their bets. So now I'll talk a bit about how I tried to integrate those into the games that I did design and test at Playtest Zero. First is Crisis Angels, which is a game about transforming heroines, or as I also sometimes call it, it's like Magical Girls plus plus. The idea here is that people fall apart, and I wanted to design player characters who would be kind of unreliable or fallible heroines. A lot of this draws on Maho Shoujo and similar works which inspired the game, where relationships are vague and precarious, and conflicting convictions, wavering emotions, and unstable magic can turn friends into foes. So in a lot of these cases, ignoring like review Starlight there, it's not so much that the heroines are inherently opposed to each other, but sometimes their values clash, or sometimes they give in to moments of weakness, and it's in these times that conflict sparks. But because everyone is ultimately fallible, you have to kind of be cautious in who you trust and how much. So one way I tried to do that is the crisis system, which I'll explain in a bit, and the other was by setting expectations. So the crisis system was kind of based on Orbital Blue's Blue system, except instead of um, like things coming to a head where like, oh, I have to deal with my troubles. Basically, heroines can slowly accumulate crisis through cracks, which are unreliable actions with no regard for group interest, until eventually they break when they pursue divergent goals, which can require intervention. Because if you've got a loose cannon with as much power as they have, then that could put a lot of people in danger, including yourself and your friends. But heroines have to go through this break in order to advance in power. There's no XP in the system. Like the only way to get stronger is through the break. So it creates this kind of system where players are incentivized to be kind of to play unreliably, to play vulnerably, and to require others to rein them in. But yeah, quoting from Tyson Pugh, the potential for blissful defeat recodes the telos of most queer games. So basically, it's like, you know, where are the times that you would rather lose than win? Um, would you rather let someone else achieve their objective rather than enforce your own agenda? There are all these moments that you can lean into that aren't just I want to win at the expense of anyone else. Um, right, but setting expectations was something I found had to be done because a lot of play cultures, especially the mainstream ones, are all about cooperation all the time with no room for conflict. So going into this, I had to make it clear to players that you can mess up, you can go against each other. The rules are designed for that, so you've got a safety net. But yeah, it's not always just about the rules because everyone brings their own baggage into games. So the other game, which is the one included in the bundle, is Kora Core, where on the Pistis every fencer for themselves, in a sense, and that's something I tried to mirror through the setup of the game, because in fencing, there are limited slots on team, and also even in team setups, bouts tend to be like a series of solo events. It's always one-on-one, even if your teammates are kind of supporting you. But overall, the tournament structure makes it such that you're competing against your teammates, even as you're relying on them. Like in solo events, you eventually have to go up against them, probably. Which leads to this interesting situation where you want to support, everyone around you, but at the same time, you're also competing. Um, and it's this interesting thing where, of course, everyone is basically the protagonist in their own journey, which makes even your teammates kind of antagonists in a sense. It's not like a purely team sport where your entire team triumphs as one. Like in fencing, it's possible for individuals to shine even as the team fails, or I guess vice versa. So it's all about finding the balance between team bonds and growth and personal triumph. You help your teammates grow, celebrate their wins, even if you have to fight them to attain your own goals. Um, and it's kind of difficult to like necessarily incentivize mechanically. So basically, it has a lot to do with role playing in between the mechanics, and like the best I've been able to do for that so far is to tell people like you can't just rush from role to role, which is like something that's stressed in a lot of fiction first games, even though this isn't a fiction first game. But again, one way to encourage that is to make it such that players aren't always equal and there's always a chance for uneven advancement. This way, people are always like looking out for like, okay, who's in the lead, who is poised to shine. If this goes to a tournament, who is probably gonna win? And like, if that's the case, do I try to, hitch my wagon onto the rising star, or do I band with the other underdogs? And do we try to take a victory from beneath? So by putting in these shifting positions, you've always got these shifting dynamics. And that's to say nothing of when you take fencing out of the question. Like, what if two characters just like each other, or what if they just hate each other's guts? How does that affect cooperation beyond the level of the rational? So, yeah, like closing this, as to playtesting ambivalence, uh, one thing is to find formats. This is formats of like playtesting, but also finding which games you've experienced that like support ambivalence, not just through explicit mechanics, but even just their wider framework. So, like Playtest Zero introduced me to a lot of games, including Firebrand style games like Aaron's Spectre of Broken, which was like a big influence on how I did this because this kind of anthology format makes it easier to set up various scenarios where ambivalence is possible, as opposed to like the rigidity of a game with a universal resolution system. And of course, there's a matter of both text, like rules text, games text, and play culture, because, like I said, everyone brings in their own assumptions. And like all across game studies, it's recognized that we don't just learn from the rules of a game, we learn from previous games we've played, like people we've played with, and like all this baggage about how games are framed in the world that we bring with us each time we play. And that about wraps up what I have to say.
All right, thanks, Arisia. We have for our next presentation um, a video. Thomas couldn't be here to do this live today, so he sent a video presentation in. I just want to take a quick moment here to mention that Thomas was actually one of no, not one of Thomas was actually the first person to kind of like suggest playtest zero, like so none of this would happen without him, like his initial like impetus to like get some playtesting started. So yeah, thanks so much to Thomas for like kicking us off, and yeah, I'll bring up, you can check out all his stuff here as well, and I'll bring up his video for the other city now. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Thomas Manuel, and I'm here to talk about my game For the Other City. So basically this is a game about two detectives from two cities that are in the same place but sort of in separate dimensions, so they're kind of layered on top of each other. One detective from each of these cities has to kind of come together and they have to work together to solve a murder that affects both of them. If you've read The City and the City, like that is the main kind of touchstone for the concept. And, you know, it has this kind of Disco Elysium influence as well. It mechanically is based on For the Queen. It's a descendant from the Queen game. And it was funded by the Story Synth and Big Bad Con microgrant program. So it's available right now. You can play it on the Story Synth platform like today. So what I want to really kind of talk about is how this game kind of came together. What was the process of like of designing it and playtesting it with the Playtest Zero community. So if you've used StorySynth, you know that the backend is essentially just a Google Doc. So all the questions, all the content for the game is in the form of a Google spreadsheet, and then you kind of connect that spreadsheet to StorySynth, and you get this kind of interactive platform through which to kind of play the game. And you know, you can invite other people, and it's exactly what you would want from a VTT to play For the Queen style game. So I highly recommend StorySynth. I highly recommend you go and check it out. It's very easy to use. This Google Sheet thing is like dead simple, and yeah, it's there's ways to like expand it, which I have kind of done. You can see something like there's a section to like write clues down and stuff like that. So there is more than just displaying cards as well. So I thought I would start talking about this game by explaining how you play it and just telling you a little bit about the game so that I can get into like how those pieces came together. So the first thing that you do in the game is you go through the setup phase where all the rules are in the form of cards. You kind of take turns reading cards out to each other. And one big part of that setup phase is kind of deciding what these two cities are. So it's as simple as choosing two details for each city and then naming them and then kind of deciding in which ways they're opposed, right? So one of the advice given here is that if one city is high tech, the other one is assumed to be low tech. So you don't have so the opposite adjectives are not listed here. It's assumed that any adjective implies the opposite for the other city, because I think a part of the game is this kind of tension between these two places and these two detectives as embodiments of these two places. And the last part of the setup stage, is this prompt that kind of grounds the whole game. There are two bodies, one in each city. How is it so clear that these two bodies are connected, that this is one crime that the two cities have to work together to solve? And this is a super cool prompt because it essentially like every game for the other city starts out with a unique murder, with a unique case to solve, and I think that is that is a very cool thing, and adds a lot to replayability. After that, the game works very similar to other Descended from the Queen games. You have a card which has a question on it, and that question is the main prompt. What this game does slightly differently is that it has an alternative prompt in the form of a clue. What this means is you could, when you draw this card, you could just answer the question, and we could essentially get a scene or a vignette in the story of how these two detectives solve the case. But if you don't like the prompt, you don't have a great answer to it, then what you could do is narrate a scene where the two detectives stumble upon a clue in the case, and there is an example of what that clue could be. So in the first one, there's the question of what did you bring your partner as a gift. So the idea is that when these two detectives meet, you have brought a gift for the other detective. But if you don't, you can't think of a good gift that your character, that detective would have brought, then you could come up with a scene in which they stumble upon a whisper, and this whisper is a clue that that you don't even really need to say anything other than oh, this detective hears a whisper that says this, and we don't really know the import of that yet. You don't have to also say, and this is how it solves the case. That is not just they have to stumble upon a clue, and then we figure out later, or the other players can kind of weave that clue into their next scene. So if you think of ideally, when I imagine these as physical cards, the clue would be on the back. So you would have the main prompt on the front side of the card, and you'd look at it and you'd be like, I don't really have a good answer for this. You could turn it around, and there would be another alternative prompt, right? You can still, of course, pass or have this card answered by another player or something like that. But I wanted to give this little bit of latitude of I want to answer the question, I want to narrate a scene, but this specific prompt doesn't work for me. But maybe I have a cool idea for a clue that people could find. And so there are about 40-ish cards like this, and you kind of go through the game. You can play as many cards as you want. For the Queen, at any point, you can kind of go I think we've seen enough scenes, or we've come up with enough clues where I have, a strong sense of what the mystery is and who did it and all of that. And we can call the game to a close. Or, you could just be running out of time and call the game to a close. And this is the last card. And it says basically take turns, starting with the player who drew this card. Pick one of the two detectives and answer one of the following questions. How does their theory reflect the city they came from? Or knowing what they know, what do they do now? And this last card was a big challenge. And I think Alex Roberts, talking about For the Queen, describes that game's last card as a conversation ender. Unlike every other prompt in the game, that one is a yes or no question, right? And the point of a yes or no question is that you answer yes or no, and you stop talking. But I felt like in this game there was this thing where you got to the end and you had a lot to say. You had something that you really wanted to say at the end, and I was trying to find a way to kind of facilitate that, but still keep the question focused, and also kind of define what you don't talk about now. What to let slide and what to kind of forget about. And this card was a pain in the ass. It was a real kind of challenge to get to the stage where I was happy with this last card. The title of this slide was much ruder when I initially wrote it, and I have edited it for public consumption. So it initially started out as who's responsible for these deaths, what happens after we've solved that case. So again, it's the purpose of the last card hasn't changed very much. There's still this, it started with a sense of okay, we need to know the ending of the case. I feel like that's important for closure. But there's also this epilogue kind of quality that I wanted to achieve. and it transformed into a very open-ended, just discuss your theories, who did it, like everyone take a turn and just talk about your theories, and then also give an epilogue. And that was just too big and too unfocused. It didn't help with ending the game. And then that kind of got the next iteration of that was just, okay, let's forget the question of who's behind this. Let's just get into knowing what they know, what do they do now, and this kind of like, let's just do the epilogue. Because a lot of the time, what clearly the main part of this game, or the thing that keeps happening because of the questions, because of the design of the game, is that you come up with this murder which very personally affects these two characters, affects their relationship with their city, their job, the kind of systems of power and things like that. So usually at the end of the game, you don't go like, just another case, I'm moving on with my life. Usually it's like, okay, do we first, it commonly ends up being that it's a case that you don't want to solve, or that case that you don't want to complete for whatever reason. In the final version, again, it's a very similar kind of return to where I started, but just kind of nice, a nice refinement on those two things. Instead of who is responsible for these deaths, I've ended up with how does the theory reflect the city where they come from. Again, kind of like suggesting that, hey, the theory isn't important, because like in this game, the theory you end up in is going to have holes in it, and it's not really important, how airtight and the lack of plot holes in the theory that you come out. That's not interesting for me. It's like, okay, let's get into why this theory is cool. Like tell me that, and then this kind of epilogue question. Other things that sort of helped, that came out in the process generally, like the playtesting process was great, because every time a question came out, you could see like what questions people were reacting to and what questions they weren't. The setup stage benefited a lot from the playtesting process, because people were reading out the rules to each other, and it's very, very clear. We've gone through the setup stage. Does everyone know how to play the game? Like, has the text I've written communicated what I wanted to communicate? And that was a big thing. Even this idea of having a starting prompt, a set starting prompt that says, okay, why are we so sure that these two murders are linked? Like, even that came out of the playtesting process. Another important point was this thing about, maybe like having a more elaborate card that talks about safety when in the setup stage itself, to especially because there is a murder, there is crime, there is cops, there's all this stuff that you kind of want to set some ground rules up specifically related to those things. And the last point, I added it here because I have to, obviously, like Juliet, who's an amazing playtester and general person, said it was their favorite Descended from the Queen game. And sometimes feedback just makes you happy, and you feel like, yeah, it was worth it's worth making this game. If somebody finds it fun to play, somebody likes it. So yeah, that kind of feedback is always worthwhile. It doesn't have to be sophisticated stuff. Not to say that the opinion of this game was good is not a sophisticated opinion. I think it's a very sophisticated opinion for a very sophisticated game. And that's it. Please do check the game out. And it has been, I highly recommend, Playtest Zero as a space. It has been super useful to me on this game, and generally like the other dozen games that I've brought to the space. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, that was Thomas. And we had that was really cool. The just that one slide of like showing the evolution of like one card, like one question in the game. I thought that was cool. I like seeing those kinds of deep dives. So yeah, our next presentation is from Takuma Okada. I will bring them into the stream. Hello.
Hi.
All right, give me 1 sec. I gotta bring your presentation too. Cool. All right. So yeah, Take it away, Takuma.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, I wanted to kind of talk generally about world building and specifically kind of world building that I was trying to incorporate into a handful of the games I brought to Playtest Zero. So this presentation is called Starting Small, Building a City from the Ground Up. And I'm using the context of a city specifically because that's the kind of thing that I like. But this also, applies to larger settings. If you have like a whole solar system or a whole universe, if you're doing sci-fi, um, it could be a whole planet, a whole world, a country. But the city is what I'm familiar with, and I wanted to break it down into these kinds of parts. Um, this is also kind of drawing from I'm Sorry, Did You Say Street Magic by Kato, whose game is in this bundle. Um, Street Magic does this really cool thing where you start off setting some adjectives that kind of color your city and your compasses, uh, and you talk about the city as a whole very, very broadly, and then you start building the things that make it up, starting with like districts, neighborhoods, those kinds of things. And then within those are landmarks, like physical locations, and notable like places. And then within those landmarks, there are residents attached to them. And it's a really, really cool game. But it got me thinking, what if you went the other direction and you started with role play and you started with characters? And I've been working on a couple games that do that kind of thing. There's a game that my friend Etta and I kind of like play stormed a few months ago, or like a year ago ish at this point, um, where you just make a bunch of characters and you throw them together, and then the whole setting gets built up around that. Um, that's why I've kind of got these things at the bottom. That's the things that I'm interested in right now in terms of game design. Important objects, personal rituals, one-on-one conversations, everyday interactions, these kinds of things. And I'll talk about some of those now. So part of oh, where to start with this? The thing that I was talking about earlier, with the throwing the characters at each other, I just brought to Playtest Zero as like mainly an idea. I hadn't really written it out at all. Oh, that's the next slide. What am I doing? Um, I put these out of order. This slide, okay. So there's kind of two components to this that I want to expand on. And the first one is this, real life objects. And these are things that you can pull from real life, like small things that kind of kick off the world building process for you. These are things in the world that instantly make it like touchable and interactable and relatable to you. So the example images I have are this picture that I took of this street lamp that's in a park in Portland that I really, really like. And this kind of image of the street lamp in the middle of the park is really interesting. Um, and that combined with seeing art from Shannon Cow, who did the art for I'm Sorry, Did You Say Street Magic, as well as my zine Alone on a Journey. Shannon does these like places that have this kind of like urban fantasy tinge to them. There's no people in the art usually. They're like street lamps with like fish swimming in the light, that are really cool. And this place that I've been to also gives me that kind of vibe. I have my wallet here with like some boba shop reward cards, card from Affection Game by Josie Robo, which is a really cool prompt-based, card-based game. I have like a transit pass. I have a library card. And this is one of the games that I play tested at Playtest Zero, based on which is one of the games that I made during Promptober, where I made 31 games in October. Uh, And my girlfriend, Lyra, who is in that wallet picture, came up with this mechanic where you came up with places in the city by pulling things from your wallet or your pockets. And that was like a really, really like small, interactable thing that was really, really cool. And it helped us come up with places really easily, like really detailed places that we had some kind of context for, that we could have nuance for. Um, I think there was like a Costco receipt or Costco membership card that someone had, that led to a scene of these two guys who just would like get Sundays there once a week and like not talk, which was incredible. And some of the other examples from other games that I have here, that mechanic reminded me a lot of the mechanic in Swords Without Master, where you pull something out of your pockets, and that is like an important item that kind of like represents your character. There was a Swords Without Master game that I played where I had a tin of Altoid, like sour orange Altoids. And I was like, this represents my character. In what way? I don't know yet, but this is it, which I found really cool. And that affected the world that we built in really interesting ways. Same thing with like Ribbon Drive, where you each make a playlist to kind of set the background for your game. We've all been in situations where we've like imagined a soundtrack playing in the background, or seen stuff where there's music playing in the background, or we've been at a party where there's music playing in the background, and plenty of road trips where we've had music going. And it's really cool how that game instantly pulls in those memories and those experiences, and kind of helps you fill out the world in like really interesting, specific, like nuanced ways. Finally, last thing, the thing I started a second ago. Um, I really like throwing just like characters into role play and figuring out the rest from there. It is really, really fun. And I think it can be intimidating sometimes. Like I certainly was intimidated by it um, when I was like trying to come up with this game, but it really, really works well when you're not like trying to consider all of the aspects of the world, and you're just like, I just want to see some characters and see what happens with them. So this was kind of sparked by an improv game where you already have your lines. There's two people, there's person A and person B. And person A says, "It's a beautiful day." Person B says, "Not for some of us." And person A says, "Stop, just stop." And this opens up kind of the space for you to not worry about what words you're coming up with, and also to think about the context of this conversation. Um, And usually, the way that this is played is you try to come up with as many different interpretations of these two characters as possible. Um, and it leads to some really, really cool and weird stuff. Um, it's the same thing with things like Descended from the Queen prompts, which we were just talking about, where a lot of those in the base game for the Queen, a lot of those questions are very much about relationships that that a character has with either the central character, the Queen, or with the world and various parts of the world, or with other members of the group. Um, and again, these kinds of really, really specific questions let you narrow down into this one detail, and then elaborate on that detail and how it like fits into the world, and you like fit these details together over time. um, I had a Descender from the Queen game called Stand Up Hero that's in the bundle that I playtested at Playtest Zero. And the world building wasn't like the central thing, but we still came up with some really, really interesting things. Um, I remember really strongly how our hero was like a grandma, I think like a mechanical arm. Um, and there was a scene that Aaron's character was like at the end yelling at her that they had made a promise to like sit in like an orchard or something and like eat fruit or something like that. Like we made a promise we were gonna you old fool, like, and that was really really good. It was like a cool part of the world, and like I can see that. I can see these two old people sitting there together. Um, and the other game that I playtested in this vein at Playtest Zero was the kind of come up with a bunch of characters first game. And for that, we were just making like 2 or 3 characters for each player. Each one has a name and some kind of detail about them, whether that's like a key item that they're holding, like how old they are, just some kind of physical detail, their outfit, anything like that. And then you, at random, pick 2 of those characters and just start to do a scene with them. And there are a couple guidelines for this scene, drawing from these kinds of improv games where it has to be in a city somewhere and it has to be brief. The city pulls these people apart before they can make a connection. Like these people want to make a connection, but they can't. And you just get this brief interaction. And it's really interesting to see people come up with these scenes in these moments that they've experienced, you know, in real life, like at a bus station or on a bus, and like someone drops something and you hand it to them and they get off. Like passing someone in the store, like asking someone for directions. Again, it's like with Ribbon Drive, it kind of draws in these experiences that you've had outside of the game, and adds them into the world, and then you have to fit that into the setting that you've been building together. And then finally, uh, solo games I think are also very very cool for this, because especially for like single character like introspective things like journaling games, um, again you're going from a role play perspective first. You're seeing like a character's internal monologue, you're seeing what they're doing, and how they're thinking about the world. um, you're thinking about their routine. The thing I like about journaling games is routine and how that changes over time. uh, and like that feeling of routine and how a character moves through the world is a really cool way to world build, I think. Where, oh yeah, I do these things with regularity. I have to, you know, find food, I have to go grocery shopping, I see this person at this coffee shop like once a month. Like those kinds of interactions and routines as this network of places that you go in a city or any other place, um, is I think a kind of overlooked part of world building. Um, and yeah, I think that is my presentation.
Okay. Thanks so much, Takuma. I will return thee to the Shadow Realm when we'll get our next presentation up and ready. All right. So next up is I got to scroll because we have so many people lined up to do presentations. All right. So Benjamin Moses Dino II. Benji, do you want to unmute yourself and I'll get your slides up as well?
Yeah. Oh.
Oops.
Hello. Hello.
Press the wrong button.
Haha.
All right. Okay, cool.
All right.
Slides are up. All right. Take it away, Benji.
All right. Hello. I am Benj or Goobernuts, TTRPG creator from the Philippines. I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about when I applied for the showcase, but someone, I think Harry, suggested I just talk about my game. So hopefully this will be an interesting story for you guys. So, so Mga Yao is a game I made inspired by Philippine culture, folklore, history, and um, particularly the pre-colonial and early Spanish colonization eras. That game is my baby. It has been for a year and then some. But it didn't always start like that. It got its humble start as a pirate setting for a campaign, something that I was prepping as a change of pace from the very first campaign that I ran. Um, I think it was in the middle of the Wano arc in One Piece, so that probably influenced things. Um, it was the suggestion of my dad that inspired me to shift to a more. I haven't been using the slides. Sorry about that. There's mga yaw. And that was the um, map I was working on for the pirate campaign. So it was the suggestion of my dad that inspired me to shift to a more Philippine culture angle with the project. And then things snowballed. I didn't want to half-ass my own country's representation. So the next thing I knew, I was buying reference materials. I flipped through W.H. Scott's Barangay so much. Uh, so much. Look at the. Okay, you can't see it. Never mind. Um, so then I started blogging about this project in April 2021. I wrote about stuff I read, books, RPGs, articles, whatever I could get my hands on that I could use for the setting. My first blog was about Karandun, to which Makapatag, the creator of Karandun, commented on and recommended other RPG stuff from other Filipino creators. And that's sort of when uh, my eyes were open to like the bigger RPGC community. I encouraged comments and creative criticism as I posted on Twitter, Facebook, and Discord servers because I have really bad imposter syndrome. Thankfully, I never really received any negativity about the project. Um, and I had some really good discussions on several topics, which changed the the, the project actually. And at this point, the project was still strictly just a setting to use for other RPG systems like OSR stuff. I didn't want to take on the task of making an actual game for it. It just felt daunting. But I got over that feeling in increments. While I was prepping for a campaign using the setting, at the time I was prepping White Hack. uh, I was already writing up mechanics to make the game more in theme with the setting, how the economy works, um, a ritual to invoke the gods with, making combat more dangerous. At that point, I was already making a homebrew, right? Sometime later, in a forum I used to be semi-active on, there was a guy named Zeruhur um, making a Greek mythology hack of Cairn, which is a rules light OSR adjacent RPG. It was like a switch in my brain just flipped. Why don't I do that too? Um, I mean, I was already making homebrew mechanics, and Cairn looks to be really simple to hack. Plus, it has a Creative Commons license. Yohai Gal, the creator of Cairn, was really positive about it and was even the one who suggested I do I do my own take on magic, which is now Mangayao's biggest divergence from Cairn. So that's how it started. The first very rough version of Mangayao was posted on a card.co site, and 7 months later, I released the current version on itch.io. Um, Playtest Zero was very helpful in the development of Mangayao. My first short campaign playtest was held on the Session Zero Discord server. I've done playtests where I presented two ways of or two different versions of mechanics, and I just asked like which one's better. um, this was for character creation and sorcery, and apparently I was the first to come to playtest Zero with a PowerPoint presentation. Um, and as with any playtesting, sometimes you only figure out something is flawed when you're given other perspectives. This happened to me with mechanics for ship combat and an island generation tool. Um, so yeah, I guess I just wanted to say with this story is that Mangayao is not a product of just my own efforts, but the inputs of many people from different backgrounds. I consider myself very lucky. I'm surrounded by a diverse, affirming, and also critical community, like the folk at Playtest Zero. Um, so yeah, that's me. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Cool. Thanks so much, Benj. I will. Yeah, our next. I'll send you to the Shadow Realm again. Because we have a video presentation next. KTPie couldn't be here today, so we're gonna get another video. You can check out all this stuff here, and let me queue up this thing. All right.
I'm KTPie.
Go to
I've
play.
been
Go.
active in the TTRPG community for a little over a year now, and Playtest Zero has been great for me. It allowed me to meet new people in the community, play a wide range of games that I wouldn't be normally exposed to, and as a game designer, I learned how to ask and give feedback, which is apparently an important skill. So this presentation would be more of a talking head, so I didn't have the slides prepared for today, but I will be talking about a game that I brought to Playtest Zero, which is the ridiculously titled We Failed You for the Last Time Again, which will be getting an update and also getting a rename, because let's face it, that the title is too long, it's too annoying for me. It's getting on my nerves. But that game is a GM-less game where you play as minions, not necessarily the yellow kind, but you certainly can play as the yellow minions. Anyway, you were serving an evil overlord, a mad scientist, or what have you, and making an honest effort to help them out, but sabotaging your friends along the way, and ultimately, all of you will be failing and having a bad time. So it is built on the bad time system, as the vibes would suggest. Shout outs to Kyle, by the way, Orania Games on Itch, who wrote the bad time system. But anyway, this is the game that I brought to Playtest Zero, and when I brought it to the playtest, I had some missing pieces. Specifically, I wanted to spice up the ending. When shit hits the fan, when the planet starts falling apart, and characters are getting eliminated. Yes, characters are getting eliminated. It's a mechanic I took from End of the Line, another bad guy game. Anyway, I wanted to end the game on a high note when the climax of the story usually happens. And when we played through the game, so specifically the last part, here are the feedbacks that people got. in general, people are having fun playing the game, which is good for a comedic, light-hearted game such as this. And comeback mechanics that are part of the playtest that we played are fun for people. The specific mechanic is that eliminated players can come back once later in the session to force other people to re-roll their dice, which is fun and also leans into the rooting for other people to fail, especially if you yourself like already eliminated and out of the race. And people want eliminated players to have more influence, and at the same time, they wanted to lean into more of the competitiveness of the vibes of the game. And so, I didn't have the last part of the game set up. For the previous playtest, it kind of rambled into like a sloppy ending. But what was suggested during the feedback section was that there could be a final showdown between the two players or the two characters that were left as a prize for like surviving this long into the game. They have a little bit more control over how the game ends, how the plan actually, explodes into the sunset, I guess. But yeah. So that all of the mechanics I try to incorporate into the current version of the game. Again, this game will be having an upcoming update. I'm trying to put it out, aiming it to release it before the bundle ends. Hopefully that might be true. Not necessarily a final update. I'm still trying to put it out into more Playtest Zero sessions and other Playtest sessions I'm organizing on my own. But yeah, hope you had a good time with me sharing here. And thanks to everyone at the Session Zero Discord, everyone who set up this showcase and this bundle, and everyone who showed up to play games. It's so much fun to see a lot of people in the RPGC community and beyond, just hanging out and playing games. And I'll see you all in the next Playtest Zero session.
I'm back. Hello. That was great. Shit. Okay. We have the last presentation. They always say last but not least, but everyone knows you save the best for last, right? So we're gonna bring Harry. I'm gonna summon Harry from the Shadow Realm.
I live.
All right.
Hello.
Yeah, you live. So Zuhayri Mohamed is a game designer in Malaysia. I'll let you do your own introductions. I'm gonna bring your slides to the stream. I noticed that you.
Yeah, I did it.
To yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
cool. I'm gonna.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Aaron, for giving this showcase, and thank you for all the speakers previously. You just shown like a lot of interesting concepts, interesting ideas, and a lot of things that I wished I thought of when I was preparing this presentation. But here we are. Hello, my name is Moses Dino II, Mohamed, and this is the presentation for the one game, not the one game, so for a game that is in the bundle and a game that I've been testing quite a bit in Playtest Zero, which is the Experimental Masquerade. From the left to the bar. A quick summary about the game is you play as lab workers who are invited to the lab masquerade party. The big twist is during the party itself, you are physically transformed into whatever you have chosen to be your costume. So if you, let's say, I think in one of the playtests, we had someone who wanted to be an anime character. So in the session itself, like, tada, you are an anime character. I think there's also like a person who wanted to be a broom, a magic broom from Disney's Fantasia. So it's like, yep, you sure are a magic broom that can split into multiple different brooms once they got cut. So the game is played in two phases. First is the laboratory phase, where you are just establishing connections between characters and the social dynamics of your player characters. And then the party phase, and there are character creation for each phase. The first one is just a regular fill in the blanks of the character sheet, and the other one is a Google survey. I think it's a Google form where the host of the party just gives you the email, and you are in character writing as, oh, I am this, I will come as this, and what is my costume. The game contrasts the difference between like the more controlled structure of the lab, because you are just colleagues and coworkers in a relatively professional lab, and the loose ethereal space for the party, since it's just a space of possibility. It's like an empty liminal space where you can just be whatever and almost do whatever. So the idea of the game was born from the first 3 words game jam, which is a game jam in early 2021. So the idea was, you just see this grid on my left, and you just take the first 3 words that I saw. The first 3 words I saw was laboratory, masquerade, and fantasy. So thinking about it, fantasy and masquerade is pretty obvious. You just have a masquerade party where people are being fantasy. Just like people are just like dressed up as whatever fantasy characters they want, or like dressed up in like cool RPG game like game characters, or basically it's just a step below cosplay party. But I was thinking, how do I integrate laboratory? After a while, I decided to use laboratory as a catalyst. So like, let's say you have this high-tech VR system, or like high-tech transformation system, just super advanced, almost magical, like transformation device. So what can you do? You can just like transform into your costume and have all the perks and maybe some of the side effects. And thinking about it a little more, I decided to use the lab to contrast like how loose party is, how loose like a party setting is compared to like a workplace setting. Because I've been to a decent amount of like, my friends have invited me to a few lab parties. I was like, wow, there's like this definite contrast that I've observed. And like, this also was a big deal for me because I am still learning about multiple different systems. For example, I never like really chewed on the Blades in the Dark system, and like chewed on the Cairn. That's like, I have never like done a proper PBTA system, so I'm just like, this is a vaguely social-esque setting, a vaguely like game dealing about character and interpersonal relationships. So I decided to just, screw it. Let's just try and jam in belonging outside blogging framework. Since Playtest Zero is one, it's a game jam, and two, it's in Playtest Zero. So my mindset is like, I can just bring something, and I pray to God, and I hope it works, and I just like test it out. This is also marks the first time that I like used a character keeper and just like based the design from that. I think around that time people are talking about like, is it system first then character keeper, or the character sheet and then you base the system around that? So I like, you know what, let's try it out. So as I was continuing to design, like thinking about how the game pieces start to fit, I had like blasts of inspiration. Not, I would say inspiration, it's just like blasts of just words in my head. And I decided to use it to design the party face questions. And it's like, in my head, it was like, oh, I'm so clever. All these questions I'll build up to like certain narrative climax. It's like, in retrospect, maybe it was not as clever as I thought, but it was pretty fun for me. First, because the questions are in such an order from which is like, oh, who are you? What time are you arriving? Are you bringing food or not? Are you bringing a +1 or not? Into like, what is your biggest fear? Can you allow yourself to be truly seen? What can you wish to say if there are no consequences? Just like somehow oddly like personal questions from a vague party planning survey. Then after like a few tests, I think I was not fully grasping the feel of the token system and like moves from BOB. So I decided against that. It was like, it felt really awkward because characters just didn't flow. It could be just the mood at the time. It could just be like the prompts itself. But I decided to like just take out the token system and take out moves and just have prompts instead. Like instead, have situations and like frame situations and just like have characters interact in frame spaces. And the first party phase was pretty is what exactly as I expected. From the first like, oh, we are introducing characters who are arriving sequentially. I was like, it's kind of awkward. There's like two people, there's maybe some drinks, there's maybe nothing, into like ending with an anime character cutting another character who's a magical broom who's split into multiple brooms. It's like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to happen. So like after testing that, I decided to like ask around and I asked like friends, it's like how to like give the laboratory phase more structure, because the party phase was just like freeform, a little bit messy, a little bit chaotic, and that's pretty okay for me. But the laboratory phase needed to have at least a semblance of structure and a semblance of like character roles or like character archetypes that you would see in a typical lab. So like after I have like that a bit down, I had to refine the scenarios a bit more, and I was like, you know, the deadline for the jam's up, so I think this is done and just ship it. But the biggest takeaways that I gained from like this and all the playtesting I did in Playtest Zero is like there's a lot of possibilities that you can do for TTRPGs in a digital space. I think the biggest feedback I got from like the first run of testing this experimental masquerade was like, whoa, Google form as character creation is like neat tech. I was like, I thought this would be like obvious, because at the time I was thinking like, hey, is there no TTRPG that has character creation similar to like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, where you have a BuzzFeed quiz of sorts, and then at the end you just spits you out a character. So that the Google Sheet was like my sort of attempt at it, and I believe that using software, or at least like using computer-based technologies, has more to offer in like tabletop role playing beyond just having a virtual space for you to just roll dice and make characters in. I think in one of the end of the year Playtest Zero sessions, we were talking about Craigslist ads as TTRPG, and you know what? That sounds like super weird and super fun, and it might be worth checking out. And from that, I believe that there are just a lot more that can be done within tabletop role playing that honestly we barely scratched the surface of. Like I remember when I first read Possum Creek's Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, my mind was like, whoa, you can do this. And ever since that, I was like trying to like think about a lot of different ways where you can like create narratives within a tabletop role-playing game. It's just like it feels a lot more vast than just rolling dice and doing things. And there's probably a lot more that I haven't even like started to read or haven't even touched yet. And this is like, it feels like an almost endless horizon, because it's just people interacting with the people, and that's a lot of people and that's a lot of interactions. And it's just being able to have space to explore those kinds of interactions is basically why I enjoy TTRPGs quite a lot. And I think that would be it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Harry. I'm gonna put you in the shadow realm for a really short moment, and then we'll come back for a quick Q&A. I just gotta do some promos. So be back in a bit. Okay, so quick one. So we've done all the presentations. They've all been amazing. I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a cool thing to do. And then, oh my god, everyone like knocked it out of the park with all the presentations. So I'm really thankful, and really just blown away by like the passion and the talent of everyone who and hard work of everyone who had done all these presentations and have been playtesting throughout the year as well. So please go support that. We have an itch bundle up there. Please go look for that. If you go back through all the slides. You can see everyone's itch pages as well. So yeah, go support all these designers. Give them money for their games. Money is good. Well, living is good. You kind of need money for to do that part. So yeah, go get the bundle. And if Playtest Zero sounds like a cool place that you want to be in, we like I mentioned, we are starting again next week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then it will be fortnightly after that. I will usually do a post on like Twitter and stuff, and just remind people when a Playtest Zero week is coming up. I'm running low on like weird random images to add to those posts. So if you can give me some more, that'd be great. So yeah, we run on the Session Zero Discord. We're like a little weird hermit crab thing. Just because we started I met Thomas through this Session Zero. Like we knew each other online, but like we met when we played games at Session Zero, and then we started playtesting games in the Session Zero Discord, and we've kind of just continued using that space for that. So yeah, if you so it works on an invite only basis for now, just because like we want to try and keep the space like pretty it's not small, but like also because we don't run the server, so it's like okay, we just invite only for now. So reach out to any to myself or Thomas if you'd like an invite to the Session Zero server, and we'll hook you up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I will bring everyone else back from the Shadow Realm, and if you have any questions, please send them in the chat, and we'll try to address them. Otherwise, yeah, we will. That's pretty much it for us. I'm just bringing everyone back in right now. I'll just do this. All right. Cool. I don't know if so. Thank you, everybody. I'll just leave the stream. Like I don't know if anyone else has questions. Oh yeah, we have a question from Thomas, which is has the time limit of approximately 1 hour ever felt like a limitation?
It's like approximately 1 hour, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely been times where I was like, oh, we start at 10. Oh, and we kept just talking about it and playing. It's like, wait, it's almost 12. Can we like stop now?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it works for what Playtest Zero is trying to do. Though yeah, sometimes you gotta be flexible, but approximately 1 hour is fine.
Yeah, I do remember. I think it was a topic of conversation about having Playtest Zero be a starting point for smaller playtest groups that can do more long form playtests, because those are important too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely something that like that would be really cool to see it happen. It's just I think we haven't had the kind of like critical mass of like having a lot of people available at like different times to be able to do that. But it would be really nice to be able to have that more regularly. But I think one of the things that we want to try at Playtest Zero is to try and grow sustainably, and like that often means growing slowly. But I would rather do that than like try to do too many things and then like burn people out or like get people like discouraged when things don't go well. So I have been running like playtest events for like many years, mainly in the board game space. And that's kind of like the philosophy that I learned from doing that for a long time. It's just like the most important thing is whatever gets an event to happen regularly, because if people can rely on an event happening regularly, then they will keep coming back, even though you might not have like the best playtesting, or you know, what is success, right? Like some, what is a successful playtest meetup, right? Like do you like go on to like say, oh, this is like amazing game that like got so all the awards and like made so much money, was playtested at this playtest? No, that's not what we're looking for, right? Like what you want is like a reliable, welcoming, um regular, helpful community of people to like help playtest your games. Like I think that's what we want to aim for. And yeah, I would love to have like more. Sorry, this is like a long answer to the question, but like, yeah, um, I think we are getting better every week, hopefully. Um, yeah. Anyone else want to answer that question before we answer Juliet's question?
So I guess like in my experience, the 1 hour thing has been a limit on testing some things. Like if I want to run everyone through like character creation and then playing with those characters, it can be tough, especially for complex games. But I think it also does like enforce this thing where you have to think specifically about what you want to get tested, which is a good way to be like to put yourself in the space of not just playing, but specifically playing to learn something.
It is a limitation, but in one of those ways where a limitation can be really helpful, especially for one-shot games, because it really gets you thinking about how to get playing as quickly as possible and how to write your rules in a way that is easy to understand and like grabs people and gets them thinking. And I really like that part of it.
Cool. All right. Juliet asks, how have you found the experience of bringing a game with one specific thing in mind to playtest versus bringing something just to figure out what is there? So basically, like I think Arisia, you mentioned like you know, the limitation makes you kind of like focus on like, hey, let me try and figure out this one specific thing or one or two things from the game, versus like, you know, open-ended, hey, here's a thing, can we explore like what's here, right? So yeah, like have y'all done like different modes of like playtesting those things? It doesn't have to be something that you brought, right? Like if you help playtest someone else's game, like in those two different modes, how have you found that?
At least for me, it's when you have a specific thing to focus on, it makes it easier to provide more specific feedback. Because like, okay, you're looking for example, character creation. So I can just like put my mind to how does character creation feel? What kind of characters am I expecting from this end of the session? Compared to like whenever someone brings a more vague concept, it sometimes just like, hey, you might want to think about this system or this concept. It's just like a lot more just in the sense of feedback. It just ends up being more vague and broad, and sometimes it's useful if you're just trying to branch off an idea. But if you have an idea in mind, it's a lot less helpful because like, oh, I want to try thinking about it in this way, but all these other options I can now also start to consider, and now you're just in. What if I try doing this thing instead? Maybe this system, maybe this system, and you just kind of like spiral. So at least that's been my experience.
Yeah. Anyone else? You make a good point. I guess for myself, I think I have done both methods of like having a specific thing and then having like oh, is there anything here, like usually more like a play-storming session, right? And I I think it's easier as a game designer to do the second bit. It was like, hey, here's a thing, right? Like, what do you think about it? But like, it's like what Harry was saying. As a playtester, it's much harder to like I don't know what kind of feedback to give, like when it's like so wide open compared to like when you have like specific questions. So I think there can be things that we can do to like help each other out, like because like I think one of the things that we do when we're like playtesting is like you know like try and figure out like you know what is it that we're trying to figure out, I guess. So like being able to like hey, even though this is just a general kind of like figuring out what's here kind of session, like if you have a idea, like if the game designer can have like like just something to like throw a bone to like the playtesters, like hey, like you know, I want to talk about vibes. Let's not talk about mechanics at all in the feedback. Let's talk about vibes, right? Or let's talk about themes, or let's talk about specific mechanics that I thought of that came up during the playtest, right? You might not have thought of that mechanic being important or like something that you wanted to explore, but like you know, during play, it's like, hey, how come we ended up interpreting this rule that way? Let's talk about that, right? Like, so if you I think I would like to like try to get better at like helping playtesters out, because like you're asking for help and you are getting people to invest time and effort in it. So if you are like setting up a playtest, even if it's like an open-ended thing, have some questions in mind as you are playing. That really helps people out, I think. And also as a playtester, like I think being able to kind of like look at a thing and like identify areas where like and I guess this is why like I want Playtest Zero as a format to like grow, because once you regularly playtest with other people, then you can form that kind of like, hey, I know this person, like I you know, this is the things that they might be interested in, so let's talk about that. And when you have a cohort, when you can like grow as a cohort rather than just as a single designer, that's really cool. Yeah.
That kind of does remind me of like those sessions where we end up having nothing to test specifically.
Mhm.
I think one time we just ended up talking about like, what does it mean for a game to be janky? And that was a lot of food for thought, even if the discussion felt really like not too serious.
Yeah, sometimes that's what we do at Playtest Zero. Like if you don't have, everyone is like, I don't know, I don't have anything ready to playtest. Although I have opinions on that. It's like, whatever, just bring a game, just playtest it. Don't worry. But like you know, like if you don't feel like it is an investment of energy to put something in front of other people. So if you don't feel ready for that, please, you know, you don't have to feel that you need to do it. Just talk. That's what we do sometimes. We just talk. If there's no other questions, we can move on to the next one, which will probably be the last question. Yeah. All right, last one from Zedek. Any observable distinctions in games or general themes presented at our Asia Pacific Tuesday sessions versus the Western Hemisphere like Thursday sessions? Tricky question. I don't know how many of us have like attended both.
I've attended like the other one like once. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I listen in.
Yeah. I guess being the person who most likely has been through both. I don't think it's so much a distinction between like regions as it is people, right? It's just like I feel like the people we have on like the Tuesday sessions and the Thursday sessions are different people, like regardless of what region they're in, right? Like we have different, like everyone has like different interests in like what kinds of games they want to play test. So I don't see a real distinction other than like, hey, different people are interested in different things. But like Viditya mentioned in the chat, I don't think we've done any like just chat sessions in the Thursday sessions so far. And that's more, I guess we've always had either something to playtest or nothing. And like I think the Thursday one is the only one where we haven't had we've had situations where like, oh, we kind of like just couldn't go ahead because it was just like two people. I mean, we ended up talking in the end, like so myself and Ian, uh, one time. So that's fine. I think like yeah, I don't think there's a difference. I don't know.
There's also the thing of like I know Juliet tends to attend the Tuesday ones because it's morning on the East Coast, and then I went to one once, but it was at like 4 or 5 a.m. for me. But other people in the U.S. can go to those in the morning, so it isn't like so clean. I do feel like there was a common point where we had a lot of like Descended from the Queen games going around the same time, which I thought was really interesting. Even at both, and there was like was it Isekai? Was the Isekai?
What?
Yeah. Like we had Isegai for the other city and Stand Up Hero like pretty close to each other. And I wonder whether that's just the story synth grant was going on at the time.
It's a bit of both for me because like playing for the other city opened my eyes to story synth, which led my mind to wanting learning about the grant, which led to Isekai.
How was it like for Arisia and for Bench, like listening in as well? Like, have you found anything like different?
No, I'd say for me it's like at the level of individual people as well.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I sort of just wasn't really actively listening, and I sort of just have it as background. It's a background thing. And one time Mona was playtesting a review Starlight. The review Starlight RPG. So I was like, oh wait, just brain activated.
Activate the trap card, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really can't really say any noticeable difference aside from once mentioned.
I mean, the thing to mention, I guess for people who might be listening in and don't have first-hand experience of like Playtest Zero, we're really small. Like, I think the most people we've ever had at like a session is like 7 or 8. That's the times when we had to like split up into 2 chats. So it's not a lot of people. Like it's not like a huge cohort. There's a lot of people in the server, but they're not there for Playtest Zero. They're just left over from the Session Zero server. So yeah, so it's really hard to like find any like trends. Although I guess I would like to think that like the Thursday ones have just because like the Tuesday ones we started first, right? So we've kind of like been stumbling around, like changing things around and like figuring things out as we've gone along. Um and like we made mistakes, right? Like we sometimes let things maybe oh shit, we didn't pay attention to time as well. Or like we haven't been really good like until recently. We got feedback and like, hey, we're trying to get better at like making sure we use safety tools and have like safety discussions at the start of every session. So I think potentially maybe the Thursday sessions might feel a little bit more organized just because they started later once we kind of like figured things out in the Tuesday sessions already, right? Like because just by dint of like time, like the Thursday sessions only started I think in June last year, maybe. I don't know, like mid. In my mind it's like mid last year. Yeah. So like and we've been doing Playtest Zero since 2021 at some point. So it's like it's had like a year of lead up of like oh hey, let's figure things out, right? Like we have like pinned messages by now when for the people who started joining on the Thursday sessions. Like, oh wow, you have pinned messages. I have no idea whether that's professional. It's just whatever. Yeah. I think that might be the thing. Like Thursday people might think we have things more organized than we actually do, just because we started later. But yeah. Okay, so I think that's it. We've gone for like an hour and a half now, which is the max that I wanted to go for. So yeah, that's Showcase Zero. That's what we've done in 2022, and I am looking forward to more cool playtests in 2023. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you everybody for doing the presentations and sending in videos. And like I know we had a lot of troubleshooting to do with like audios and stuff like that. So thanks everyone for the stream. Thank you. All right. I will end the broadcast. Bye everybody.
Promote the bundle.
Bye. Yeah. Go get the bundle. Where's the thing?
Call to action.
Yeah.
Pro-
There. Yeah, that's the bundle. That's when we meet up. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.